Is Florida State going to be able to beat the grant of rights against the ACC and find a way to the SEC or Big Ten?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. Thank you for coming in and checking out the live stream. Today, obviously, is a big day as Florida State has filed a lawsuit over the grant of rights against the ACC. And in conjunction, the ACC has filed a lawsuit against Florida State's Board of Trustees. We're going to break all of that down. I can't really imagine this being any bigger of a deal than this because this impacts your entire institution and the entire ACC in the landscape of college athletics. So Florida State right in the middle of it. This show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Look, I'm going to make a basic statement here. I'm going to go into a few things that I know, but this is, a very unique situation. I cover sports, and I like it a lot. But at the same time, this is a lawyer situation. And even though I've taken law classes and other people could help me advise, this is so complex that there are going to be multiple lawsuits. I ain't touching that. I'm just going to give a general perspective, and I'm also going to give everybody a chance to give theirs. This show is about opening up, just giving their opinion. If it's something about the law part of it, fire away. If it is something in regards to why Florida State should want to stay, want to leave, which league they want to go to, this is about the Florida State fans having their opportunity. And to be honest with you, I don't really have a right or wrong answer here. This is very broad. It's an unusual show, but not every day that you try to change the landscape of college athletics and broadcasting rights. So as they say, fire away and kind of let it go. I don't know where we're going to get to on this, but I'm as curious as anybody else. I've only read a couple articles. I'll read a few quotes I just pulled up before the show started. ESPN, an article. I have not even read it. Read a few other ones, one from one of the outlets in Tallahassee, read another one that was in the state of North Carolina. There's going to be different points about that. Again, very broad. This is the unusual situation. Normally you want to focus on one or two topics. This is a lawsuit that encumbers really everything you can imagine. So with that, Jerry says, Merry Christmas, Brian. Will the court filing help our 25 recruiting? Well, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second. Turn on another light here. 25 recruiting. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, it shows that Florida State's got guts because they're the first one out off the plank, if you will. This is what we're doing. We're making an illegal action. If I'm looking at it as a parent, obviously I'm not of age to be a player. I'd be like, well, they got the guts to want to go into another league, a bigger league. That's an intriguing point. I hadn't really thought about it from a recruiting perspective, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't be important because the future of your kid, if you look at it from this perspective, how many eyeballs can I get my son in front of? How many? The ACC, obviously, it's a big conference, but it's not the same as the SEC or Big Ten. It's just not. Not for football. Not for football. And I'm not saying baseball or basketball. Football, those are the two conferences. We can sit here and say whatever we want. Those are the two. And for anybody just joining, please feel free to send comments into the chat. I want this to be about the fans. Here just in a moment, I'll give it a couple more minutes so a few more people get in here. And sorry about the weird time, 4:30 on a Friday, but that's when this thing got filed. So it is what it is. When I had an opportunity, I dove in. And by the way, periodically I might be checking my phone because I am looking as I am right now, trying to get information as it comes. If I get anything, obviously I'll let everybody know that if it's super relevant. But this is an interesting scenario for me because I've covered about anything you could imagine in regards to football, But this kind of stuff usually ends up quick and all that. But there are precedents. Here's the one warrior thing that I'll bring up. If in a hypothetical situation, Florida State won this, however, and I am not getting into who, what, when, where, and why. The problem isn't that they got out of it. I really don't think the ACC would care that much, or ESPN, which the grant of rights is directly tied to because it gives all the home games for the ACC teams, blah, 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 conference games to ESPN to distribute, etc. The problem is it sets a precedent. Once precedent is set in the court of law, no matter what structure we're talking about, it could be child labor laws, it could be contract law, it could be anything. It's really, really difficult for the team that lost in this battle, this game, if you will, to come back with anything else. Because then somebody else is going to follow. Well, Florida State did it. They have to win. Like the ACC, ESPN, and those people, they have to win. Like it's more pressure for them to win than it is Florida State. That precedent is 10 bazillion times more important to them, in my opinion. Again, this is just opinion, than what Florida State's doing. I'm not saying they should win or Florida State should win. I have no opinion on that whatsoever. I'm just saying from an importance standpoint, ESPN, ACC, and any TV, like there are people that hate ESPN in the media world are rooting for ESPN right now. Hard, like their entire life. This has to go their way. They cannot, because they don't want to lose control. Power, control equals money and success to these kinds of people more often than not. So with that, I'm going to kind of scan through this article here, and I'll give the young lady credit. I'm going to give her, this is from Andrea Alderson from ESPN. And I'm just going to read a few paragraphs out here. This is an article that came out just a little bit ago that says Florida State suing ACC over grant of rights, withdrawal fee. Florida State Board of Trustees voted unanimously on Friday to sue the ACC to challenge the legality of the league's grant of rights and its $130 million withdrawal fee, a necessary first step to plot the school's future and potential exit from the conference. It's a 38-page lawsuit filed in Leon County. Obviously, it's Tallahassee, and it seeks declaratory judgment against the ACC to avoid the grant of rights, withdrawal fee, blah, blah, blah. In quotes, unreasonable restraints of trade in the state of Florida. I'm going to come back to that here in just a second. In the state of Florida, and not enforceable in their entirety against Florida State. Now that to me is an opinion part, but I'm going to come back to that. Further down, it says the university alleges chronic fiduciary mismanagement and bad faith. Ooh, those are big words. In the way the ACC has handled its multimedia rights agreements and undermined its members' revenue opportunities. Florida State is also accusing the Atlantic Coast Conference of breach of contract and failure to perform. Here's another quote. I believe that this board has left no choice but to challenge the legitimacy of the ACC grant of rights and its severe withdrawal penalties. Board Chair Peter Collins said, obviously that is from Florida State. Continuing on, none of this like being in this position. I do not like being in this position. I believe that we have exhausted all possible remedies within the conference, and we must do what we believe is best for Florida State, not only in the short term, but in the long term, end quote. I'm going to leave it there. You can read it again, the article. Looks like Andrea did a pretty good job of setting this up. Andrea Alderson from ESPN. It says Florida State suing ACC over grant of rights. There are a lot of different outlets that have it. I just picked this one randomly because honestly, I think it's ironic that ESPN, something that it is going to be directly involved in, had a writer discuss the topic itself. So with that, again, if you got any questions, you got comments, anything at all, please fire away. Let's see. We just got a 5-star. I haven't seen anything on recruiting today. I have been buried in other stuff with media. Offensive lineman from my hometown, Jacksonville. Oh, they got the big kid from Jacksonville. I did not know that. He is a stud. That's the kid from Jacksonville Reigns. He had been favoring Florida State for quite a while. I'll talk about him soon, but big time player. What else we got? Rather see Florida State Big Ten or SEC. That is from Nicholas McFarland. Nicholas, why do you say that? Any particular reason? Is it football related, basketball, overall, revenue, coaching, something else? I am curious. Let's see what we have here. Of course, somebody committed when I go out to grab something to eat before a podcast. Solomon Thomas, Jacksonville Reigns. Yeah, I was actually at one of his games here recently. That is a small world. I've seen him at Under Armour, etc. In my opinion, Solomon is a national top 50 kid conservatively. He is from Reigns High School in Jacksonville. He's just over 305, 310 pounds. When I talked to him, he was around 310. He is humongous, and he can move. He is a pure upper echelon offensive tackle, can play left side at the highest of highest levels. Barring injury, he's one of those rare high school kids, Solomon Thomas, that will play in the NFL. I'm very confident of that. He is rare as it gets. And he is a horse, too. Like, I saw him as a sophomore and a junior. He played guard some as a soft, but as a junior, they put him at left tackle. He's a dude. Let's see what else we got here. Football. Well, the thing about these decisions, Nicholas, is it impacts everything. And football is the horse in front of the cart. So there's validity to your statement. Big Ten, we're waiting from Conundrum. D. Watt, yes. Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. Big time players like this are very important. It's ironic that you get a commitment from a guy like that right when something is breaking that is quite honestly game changing for sport in America, let alone Florida State and Atlantic Coast Conference, because it involves media. It is directly about media. Although here's a generic statement: Florida State's not suing ACC or ESPN, but essentially they are. As goofy as that sounds, they really are, because it changes how much control they have over Florida State and anybody else. Again, precedent. I couldn't say that 500 times and say it enough. They don't want that precedent going against them. I get it if you're one of those guys looking at it from a perspective of, hey, I'm not a law guy. Well, it's pretty simple. Once somebody, it's like if you have 3 kids, if you let one of them do something, the other 2 see it, they're going to want to do it. That's basically what this precedent is about. Let's see. Does ACC filing yesterday upset the apple cart for the Knowles? I mean, how do I put this? I guess it was a matter of getting it done this year, maybe. I'm not sure what the timing part was. It's a good question. That's from Conundrum. I really don't know. Florida State, like anybody else, has its own reasons, but it's really concerning to me that it just kind of happened on a Friday. It's because, end of the week, in the news cycle, right before Christmas. It is a very odd time in that, but as the saying goes, that's just the way it is. So I can't really say why. I don't know what the reasoning was. Maybe that was the first chance they could get everybody meeting together and agree on it. I mean, this is a big decision. You want to make sure it's right, but I don't know. That is an interesting part. Something else that is interesting is Game Time. Make sure that you download the Game Time app. You got a chance right now. If you do it, you can buy tickets for somebody before Christmas. You can get yourself an opportunity. Game Time is a really cool app. It's got flash deals. They have opportunities on last-minute tickets. If you do not want to pay too much, download the Game Time app and check it out. Here's the way I look at it. The reason that I personally like it, look at the Florida State games, basketball, football, whatever. If you pull it up on the Game Time app and you look at a seat, it will show you a picture of the field or the court or whatever. Where am I going to be located? That's kind of the best insurance for me, because the eyes don't lie. Okay, that's not a good spot for me, or it is. Game Time will allow you to do that. You can also pick up on like a concert if you want to take somebody to another event. It could be a comedy show. Game Time has those kinds of things as well. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, back to some questions here. Let's see. D-Watt. Everybody get ready. You will see more bad calls on Florida State. Quote of the day. Actually, there could be 2 ways to look at that. Here's the other one, D-Watt, and I'm just saying it in general. Florida State is in a scenario where they're challenging the authority. Some people will give them some credit for that. Not all. I mean, it's going to be a little both, but it's interesting because just games in general, there might be some people in the ACC officiating crew and others for that matter that are tired of the bureaucracy. Maybe they get a few calls. Hunt 2022. Are there any big transfers Florida State is targeting other than their quarterbacks? I have not delved into the transfer portal as much as some other people because of recruiting. I'm actually in the midst of getting ready for the Under Armour event. I live near Orlando, and that's what I'm focused on, studying on some of the kids that I knew about and some that I didn't know as well. But the transfer portal, I'll probably hit a little bit harder starting early next week around Tuesday, Wednesday, right after Christmas. But right now, I don't know which ones they're going after. And here's the conundrum for me. Unlike with recruiting, there's more information that's out there. With the portal, some kid gets in and, Washington State is where Cam Ward's from. Well, Florida State doesn't really recruit the Northwest all that much. Occasionally, but pretty rare. I can't really get to that kid unless he's on campus or something like that. Sometimes you can catch a guy, but it's not much. Most of these kids, you don't even know when they visit. It's all behind closed doors. It's really awkward. And I don't really like the information coming from coaches all that much on this because everybody thinks they're getting somebody. Transfers, yeah. Overall, here's the thing, though. I'll just make this comment in general about the portal right now. This weekend is big for the portal right before Christmas and on Christmas because a lot of people are probably going to announce on it. There's a certain young man from Texas A&M. I'm sure you probably know who that is. Mr. Nolan, that is probably going to commit to Ole Miss, I was told, on Christmas. Everybody, and that's just an example. Walter Nolan might be the best player in the portal, period. He was the defensive tackle. It was the top overall DT in the class of 22 that played 2 years for the Aggies. Looks like he's going to play for the Rebels. Florida State and other schools are going to be going through a lot of decisions because it ends on the 2nd of January. It's kind of a weird date. It's right after the 1st. It's a terrible date. I don't know why the NCAA did that, but the NCAA is goofy. There's going to be a charge by the end of next week to have everything done because if you don't, there's not much left with the high school ranks. Like 97% of the good players are signed. So that's going to be really, really interesting. I just haven't delved into it. I'm probably going to look at it a little more this weekend. Let's see. And I look forward to, oh wow. Well, 99. As a UCF fan, good job on FSU, and I look forward to y'all being a conference mate. Well, I don't think that means they're going to the Big 12. I don't know why you would say that, but that's interesting. Charles Plot, Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. By the way, Merry Christmas to everybody. I appreciate it. Hope everybody's having a good holiday season so far. Thank you very much for making this your first podcast, by the way, every day. It is a lot of fun for me, and I hope it is for you as well. Orlando Hopkins, FSU started this process almost a year ago. Because if they don't, they will be $500 million behind. Not so many name brand. Yeah, it is rough. Conundrum. Since ACC filed in Carolina and FSU filed in Florida, will this end up in federal court? That is something that I was talking to a friend of mine about. It's a really interesting point. There's going to be a fight about where it's at. That's the biggest thing. Because how they say the court of law is neutral? That is BS. There is no neutral. Humans are not neutral. They have opinions, and they're usually very strong. They like there's a murder case or something like that. Let's use this for an example, wherever. It's almost impossible just to get the jury picked because the numbers, they have these lawyers have numbers. Well, if you're this race at this age, etc., you're more likely to vote somebody's guilty. It's just awful. They just beat the crap out of each other about that stuff. And of course, if you're in Mecklenburg County, you're more likely to look at it from an ACC standpoint. That's where Charlotte is. That's where all this is coming from on their end. And of course, Leon County is Tallahassee. It's more Florida State. The people in there are more likely to be sympathetic to Florida State. It's a big deal. So I could see it going federal. D-Watt. The rest of the Atlantic Coast Conference teams sitting back and watching Florida State. FSU doing something that other schools scared to do. I wonder how many, it's a good point, D-Watt. I wonder how many people Florida State spoke to at other schools in the last couple of weeks before they fought, because these other schools knew. This isn't, oh, we got blindsided for baloney. Coaches talk to coaches, players talk to players across party lines. Conference commissioners talk across. ACC athletic directors, on and on and on. College presidents. And then you just have board of trustees members and key influential boosters, etc. This isn't a newsflash in Chapel Hill, Charlottesville, Virginia, Boston, Massachusetts, on and on and on. I'm curious how many, because they want their take. What would you do? You know, your lawyer is really good for this. Could you talk to him for a minute, have him call us? I'm curious about that stuff because there's probably a lot of backstories. Conundrum. Knowles jumped because Irish wouldn't. Notre Dame is probably never going to join if I was to guess. Charles Platt, sorry if I missed, but any word on a decision from Cam or DJ? Not to my knowledge. I've been gone most of the day, but I think this chat would be lit up if there was a quarterback decision. That would be my strong guess there. I don't know. Maybe Cam's going to announce on Christmas Eve. I've heard other guys talking about doing it on Christmas, since, for the record, January 2nd, once again, is when all of this can end. I don't know if that's a big deal, but it's something to think about. So keep that in mind. January 2nd, I think a lot of guys will make decisions, but many of the kids that are in the portal, the schools they want, they're not getting. They're going lower level. It's stupid. Let me find something else here real quick on the grant of rights thing, because, excuse me, it's interesting to look at it from different perspectives. We were just talking a minute ago about, okay, where's the court case going to be? Well, which article you get matters, because if you get one from Tallahassee, the perspective could be different, quite different, than if you got one from like New York or even like Mecklenburg County where Charlotte is. You know, it's interesting. Tampa Bay Times even has one that says live updates. Dear Lord. So they must have had somebody that was in there in the courtroom or whatever where this was. That's pretty wild. Wow. This is, they got a whole bunch. That is nuts. That is nuts. Everybody knows that this is a big deal. There's so many different, Politico is commenting on it. What does Politico have to do with Florida State? Besides chasing clicks, that's crazy. AP, that makes sense. Florida State has sued the Atlantic Coast Conference, setting the stage for a fight. Wow. Florida State University news. What are the odds of this not being a little bit more jaded towards Knowles? Yeah. Oh, there's the great word. This is something I read earlier. Again, Florida State University news. Draconian exit fees. Draconian means just outdated and ridiculous. It's interesting because that word doesn't get used much anymore, but it's a really powerful word. So that's pretty fun to me. D. Watt, you're right. How many schools also? Yeah, there's no way Florida State didn't talk to Miami and Clemson and Georgia Tech. You want access to the lawyers, the power brokers. Is there any precedent, anything we can use here? Because if we get out, you have options too. If not, it's different. Let's see. Angelo, hit the like button. Thank you very much, brother. That is true. Hit that like, hit subscribe, share this podcast, and comment every chance you get. Angelo, well said. Divorce papers have been filed by Florida State. LOL. Well, in some ways, that is true. Angelo is right. Florida State is trying to divorce the league that they are, without question, technically a part of. And to be honest with you, we all knew it was coming. I just didn't know how it would work because I've never been a part of anything like this. You know what I mean? It's, as they say, well, quite honestly, it's rather cold in how this goes down. But on that note, it is not cold with FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. $150 if your team does win. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's easy to use, which is definitely true. There's a wide range of betting options, including player spreads, player props, team spreads, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick the NFL season off. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, let's get back into some questions here. How many of the complaints filed would we have to be awarded to reach our goal? Oof, boy, that is a lawyer question there. I have no idea where to go with that one, Douglas. I have no idea. That is not my realm. That is a great question. Somebody, if there's a lawyer in the house, have at it. D-Watt, this process might take up to 6 months to a year, hopefully. It could take 5 years, man, because there's all kinds of countersuits and different things lawyers can do to try to make them drag their feet, and that's why this is awkward. I don't know what that means long term, but they could be trying to force FSU's hand financially and everything else by doing that. Conundrum: Florida State's alimony is going to be brutal. AKA if they don't win the grant of rights. Yeah. I don't know how this works because, like, here's the one thing I was thinking about. And the more I think about it, the more awkward it is. Let's just say the ACC won the case. And again, I have zero idea who's going to win or why. They're already owed X amount of money through Florida State and splitting the cash over the media rights and all that. If the ACC won beyond just like legal fees, I get that. Trying to get the other team to pay for the legal fees, which would be a lot. Because I'm sure these are going to be uber high-end lawyers on the ESPN side. Because I don't care if it says ESPN who they're suing. That's basically who they're suing. Good luck with that. I wonder if they're going to try to get punitive damages or whatever you want to say. Because once you piss Florida State off with that, it could really tick off other members. There's a wrecking ball theory here. It's not you're taking out one pin, you might be taking all 10. And what I mean by that, if you tick off Florida State, because there's other schools who want to leave too, do you set it up long term after 2036 that a bunch of these schools go back to doing their own thing, starting their own networks, all kinds of stuff? Be careful what you ask for is what I'm saying. And I'm sure this is not just me coming up with this. The ACC, ESPN, etc. are well aware of this theory too. If you piss everybody off, Florida State obviously being number one, but all the other schools like Carolina, Miami, and Clemson are the other three that are most likely to move on from the Atlantic Coast Conference. What do you have when they go to another conference or go independent? Do you have a chance to do business with them then? And is it worth it? Because if they're in some other specialty TV contract, kind of like, think of like the Longhorn Network with Texas, that's a pain, man. That is a pain. So I don't know how the SEC got Texas with that and how that works. It's unique, but something to think about. Orlando Hopkins, from what I heard, the Big Ten is salivating for Florida State to join as well. Who they bring with them. Yeah, because they want to get the Florida market, man. If you look at it this way, if Michigan played a football game at Florida State, could you imagine what kind of TV rating that would get, and vice versa? Also, if it's in the Big Ten footprint, Michigan's just playing Michigan State, you might get the Florida, Georgia, South Carolina market for some games that honestly have nothing to do with the normal Big Ten footprint. That's what they're trying to do. It's financially, it's pretty interesting. Angelo, they'll settle because they don't want the discovery to become public. Wouldn't shock me. That would not shock me at all, Angelo. D-Watt, I think all teams should have joined together and go after the ACC. I'm sure it's more teams trying to get out also. That's something else. Here's the thing. D-Watt brings up a good point. That doesn't mean that some of these schools may not eventually join in on the lawsuit. Who says they can't? Or file their own? Could it be, I don't know, they might try to force it to be one, but from different states, like if, for instance, if Virginia filed, that's a different state, and Florida State's talking about this contract is not legitimate in the state of Florida, they may have to fight on different ends, talking about the Atlantic Coast Conference. Conundrum. Big Ten from Seattle to Florida, LA to New York, New Jersey. Yeah. Rutgers is about an hour, give or take, from New York City. So, yeah, you're basically right. Maybe I got some Florida State news here. What do we got? Looking for some Cam Ward news here, but from one of my buddies, but I don't think that's going to happen. All right, nothing all that exciting. Let's see. Here's an interesting one from Orlando Hopkins. So, Brian, I am assuming they are trying to make it NFL, AFC versus NFC. I mean, that's one way to look at it. Because way back for people who don't know, AFC and NFC used to hate each other. They were totally separate. They did not merge until the 70s, late 60s, whatever it was. Late 60s, I believe. And I don't know how all that worked out, but the NFC was the bigger brand, if I remember right. AFC came along and merged with them eventually, took care of itself. Well, in this particular case, the ACC, at least some of the members, again, UNC, Florida State, Miami, Clemson are the ones that have most often been rumored to want to leave. So I assume that's true. I'm curious about Duke with that, especially with the Big Ten. I'd imagine they'd be interested in the Big Ten, but that's another story. And to be very, very clear, are you trying to segregate in some ways, or are they hindering? All this kind of stuff can come up in court in different ways. I don't know. Are they trying talking about Florida State or talking about the ACC? Both of them could be trying in different ways, depending on how you want to interpret that. I just think Florida State's looking for a reason to go to the SEC. They're using the point about the playoff as part of it, but they're saying that's the end of it, not the main concept. They've made that clear several times in case people were wondering. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me that you file on a Friday and it's right before Christmas. Did they wanted to get it in before the year so they could get stuff done over the break? Because, I mean, all these law offices they're done. They're done. They're not doing any court hearings next week, I can assure you. So it's pretty interesting. But anyway. I'll take a couple more questions if anybody has it, but I just wanted to address this basically. I don't have anything really extra to add other than I just wanted to acknowledge it. Again, as somebody mentioned during the chat, in case you missed it, Solomon Thomas has committed to the Knowles class of 25. I've seen him a couple times. I'll talk about him more in upcoming podcasts. He is a freaking dude. D-Watt heard Ward making a decision on Xmas. Oh, maybe he will. I bet a lot of people do, actually. I have no idea where he's going. Orlando Hopkins. I guess, it's over TV like ESPN versus Fox. Yeah. Look at it this way. There's something else here before I forget. Let's say ESPN's on the losing end of this, and that's if the ACC loses. Fox loses too. CBS loses. All media loses. Again, that precedent isn't for ESPN. It's for media. That's why this is so important. All those people, whether private or not, there's going to be some legal advice headed the ACC's way. Because these other companies don't want Florida State to be able to open that door, which is basically Pandora's box opening up. Because then what's to stop down the road Minnesota for wanting to join the Big Ten or something, or the SEC and get out of their rights, whatever their deal is in the Big Ten? I have no idea. It's awkward. They want ironclad. This is how it's going to be so they can sell to their advertisers long-term and not have to go back and rechange deals. The only way they do that is if it's ironclad. It's very awkward for all these media companies. Angelo, Florida State quarterback news for Christmas. Could be. Orlando. I got it. Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm not sure on all of this. Again, this is a stab. I am no lawyer. I have, like Bud Elliott runs Nolecast as a lawyer. Even, he's got a water. It doesn't matter. This is so complex. It's still opinion in a lot of it. And we don't even know where the court is going to have this case or cases. North Carolina or Florida. Is it going to be able to be resolved based on it's not legal in Florida? That one little point could take 6 months. Court cases are not quick, especially when they're this big. They're going to throw out all the big guns. The money on their side, meaning the ACC, again, I don't know how this works exactly, but just logically, how would ESPN not help them? It's in their best interest to do so. Is that legal? I don't even know, but I mean, I would assume so. It's free market. So I'd imagine the ACC will have the best lawyers in the world on this in some way, shape, or form, and business executives to that point too, just to call in. If they could get somebody they know, it's somebody that's on the legal team for the Atlantic Coast Conference, I'm sure they're contacting people just to get opinion. What would you use as a primary point to win this case? That kind of stuff. Dustin Irvin, best interest to help who? I just got here. Well, here's the deal. Florida State, if they win, hypothetically, it's bad for all media outlets because it sets a precedent. And what I mean by that, it has nothing to do with Florida State. It doesn't matter which school it is. But once one team beats one of these grant of rights or anything similar, who's to say that another team and another team and another team, once a precedent is set in the court of law, they use it for hundreds of years. There are court cases that come up that are going back and forth, and somebody will say, well, in 1879, so-and-so said it's precedent. It's ridiculous, but that does happen. It could even be 15, 20, 30 years ago, and somebody can use it, but then somebody might come back on the other side and use another precedent. They don't want it in there. They don't want to add it because right now, ESPN and media companies have all the leverage. Name a time in your life where you saw somebody give up leverage willingly. Why? It just doesn't happen. So it is what it is. I gotcha, because others will follow suit and then they'll jump to get out to 100%. Justin, you are a gazillion % correct. And to be quite honest with you, if you're the ACC and ESPN or CBS, whoever, I mean, it's straightforward. Also on this, I'm curious if there will be any talking points with Norvell or just in general, like women's rowing, anybody, whatever sports are on campus, if anybody talks about it or if they all stay mum. I have no idea. But I just wanted to bring that up. So again, it's out there. There's a lawsuit. There's a countersuit. We're right before Christmas. There's not going to get anything done right away. That's all I really know. But before I forget, Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you very much for making this a big part of your day. I appreciate it if you'd hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast. It greatly helps. Trying to grow the show as much as possible. Probably going to have another show early next week. I don't know if I'll have any this weekend. It depends on recruiting news. I might do something on Solomon Thomas since he just committed, found out during this live show. But otherwise, I'll probably do something when I hear something about Cam Ward or early next week right after Christmas. But with that, thank you all very much. Have a great night. Take care.